Your body's under attack from the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, and even the skies above you. The chemtrails, microplastics, nanotechnology, heavy metals, these are not conspiracies. They are in your bloodstream right now. And if your liver cannot keep up, every other system in your body is paying the price. And today I'm sitting down with one of the world's leading detox and natural health experts that I've been following for years, Dr. Jonathon Group from Global Healing. And we're going to break down whether you actually need to detox or where to start, what's destroying your health without you knowing it, and the exact protocol for you to clean it all out. Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, the podcast that gets straight to what works. I'm Sara, certified nutritionist, founder of Accelerated Health Products. Here I cut through the noise, bring you the real strategies, powerful supplements, natural solutions that actually work. So we are going to jump in. Welcome, Dr. Group. I'm super excited to have you here. You are a chiropractor, registered dietitian, author, and founder of Global Healing. And you have been doing this for a very long time. So super excited to get into this topic. I want to start with the very beginning. We're so toxic, but really are we? Is this just a myth? Is this just a fad we need to detox? Is this being overhyped?
Absolutely not. In fact, it's being underhyped. And I like the way you started by saying, let's cut through the noise, because, back in the late 1990s, we were dealing with chemicals and toxins, but now we're dealing with hundreds of thousands, if not millions more toxins than we had back then. Every year, there's thousands of chemicals being added to the list of, hair care and potions and lotions and fertilizers and herbicides, paints and paint coating. I mean, literally thousands of chemicals being added. And then on top of that, like you mentioned, what's being sprayed on us. We're looking at hundreds of different chemicals that they're finding in the geoengineering that's going on, and then just in the air in general. So yes, we're dealing with a really far more than an epidemic of over toxicity that's basically causing bioaccumulation.
Yeah.
We can clear out a lot of these things, but we can't keep up.
No, and my health crisis started, 20 years ago or so, and I was feeling it. I was sensitive. I started learning about all of this, but 20 years ago was so much less than what we're dealing with today. And I even have family members and close friends who know what I do and hear what I say all day long, and they still think that chemtrails are a conspiracy. And why would the government or anyone spray us on purpose? And what are these things that you're really talking about? And no, we don't need. Hey, I'm kind of eating organic. I'm somewhat staying away from gluten. I think I'm eating healthy, but you cannot argue with the rise in cancer rates, the rise in autoimmune issues, and just the overall fatigue and lack of energy and brain fog. And girls, it is not just menopause, right? Your menopause is a lot worse than your grandmother's menopause. So something is going on that we are not seeing with our naked eye.
Absolutely. And our mitochondria are under assault. The same mitochondria that produce energy for us will actually shut down energy when we're in a cellular defense response. When you get sick or your infections and things, your mitochondria actually shut down energy production for you to rest and work on other things. So we're under assault with this cellular defense mechanisms all the time. And that's mostly from this toxic burden, is preventing our mitochondria from producing the energy that we need.
Right. And that energy, people think of energy, I'm getting energy from caffeine or that monster drink or even food. But our energy comes from cellular energy, that mitochondria. So if that food is not converting into energy for the mitochondria, it does us no good. And some of that chasm between the food coming in, what we think is energy, isn't energy until it is being converted, and that gets disrupted by all of these toxins. So that's why the brain says, well, this doesn't make sense. I'm taking in what I'm supposed to be taking in. It used to give me energy, and now I'm not feeling it. Um, so I want to get specific. You talk about chemtrails, you talk about nanotechnology. People are sitting there going, well, chemtrails I may have heard of, but that's a conspiracy. A lot of people haven't heard of nanotechnology. People are hearing about microplastics, but they don't see them, so they don't think twice about them. I want to get into all three of those.
Okay, yeah. So when you mention chemtrails, that's kind of like the media spun that as like some sort of conspiracy thing, but that's been going on since right after World War II. And you can go on Google or Yahoo or YouTube and just type in solar radiation management or stratospheric aerosol injections, and they actually put out that this is a good thing, that they're trying to spray different types of materials in the sky to reflect and block the sun for quote global warming. And one of the main things they're using now is aluminum. And what it's actually doing is, yes, it does reflect a little bit, but it actually creates a heat dome where you're actually getting warmer. You notice this, we had droughts, more wildfires, we're actually getting warmer. We're getting less snow every year, and so this idea that they're trying to block out the sun is actually creating holes in the ozone layer that make it worse and actually creating more heat. But it's also raining down all these things. And one of the things that is a part of the building of nanotech in the body, and this goes back, instead of all the way back to 50 years like geoengineering, it goes back about 20 years with research on nanoparticles that are basically sensors, biosensors, ways to hold and transfer information that are very, very, very small. So we're talking like, 1/20th, 1/50th the size of a red blood cell.
Hmm.
And we're seeing this now in people's bloodstream. And some of it we feel maybe is getting introduced in the body by different types of medications or injections or shots, but also we're seeing it in wild animals. So doctors like Dr. Anna Mahalcia, that have been studying all of these things for the last 5 or 6 years, Maria Chrysler, these are scientists that are looking at live blood analysis and electron microscopy, and they're saying, well, why are we seeing all this weird nanotechnology in wild animals? They're not getting shots, and it must be coming from either a water source or being sprayed, atmospherically. But I always talk about, like, even in 2016 there was an article in Forbes magazine about how smart dust is a good thing. And what this is nanotechnology that is so small that you're able to just breathe that in and incorporate it into your body. And the whole article talks about, hey, if we can get smart dust into everybody's body, then we can go and like rub a wand over you or use some kind of biosensor like Star Trek, and tell you what's wrong with you, and then help you to heal it and fix it and check your biometrics and everything else. They always want to spin it as like, hey, this is some type of good thing. But we've already found out from these people looking at all these things and other documentaries, like there's one called Blue Truth, where people remember during after the rollout of injections and everything. And that's when, well, I think that's really when people started paying most attention to it, but it's not just from that. And they were picking up Bluetooth signals outside of the body, MAC addresses, the MAC, which is a Bluetooth address, just by scanning Bluetooth scanners around people's body. And they're still finding this today. In the documentary Blue Truth, they actually went out in, I believe it was El Salvador, and they went way out to these cemeteries where people had died of COVID or complications of injections and all these kind of things. And this was far, far from any cell towers. There was no cell phones or anything. And they were actually going out to the graves and picking up Bluetooth addresses from the cadavers in the grave. So there is a way that this nanotechnology, and they're basically nano-size scale circuitry, and you can't go too far as to say it's like a whole computer system. It's not, but it's like little sensors and little receivers and antennas that can transmit information back and forth and store information. And you can even see that under this dark field microscopy, where they actually blink. Like, I'll show you a slide here of one. If we're okay to go ahead and
Yeah.
share screen, I can
Let's
I can
see.
show one that here, and Okay, so I don't see you now because I'm sharing the screen, but are you seeing my screen here?
There we go.
So yeah, so this is nanotech and microorganisms. You can see they're little square looking things. They are comprised of silica. You know, we know silicone and silica, which is also one of the highest things seen in the chemtrails right now when you take rain samples and snow samples. And so silica and hydrogels and lipid nanoparticles and metals basically make up these little circuitry things here. So sometimes it's called smart dust. Graphene oxide is also part of this makeup. Remember when people were getting magnetized and
Yes.
people were putting magnets on their arms and everything? That's graphene oxide and iron content of these metals. So we see here, like if you look at this, uh, so these little particles here, you can see them actually blinking inside. So they'll blink. They're light emitting diodes on a very small scale, and when you focus in on these on live blood analysis, you see them blinking green, blue, red with these like little LED lights. It's crazy in your bloodstream compared to a red blood cell. And then the idea is that external influences of Wi-Fi or cellular or EMF or a van pulling up in front of your house and pushing in electromagnetic signals can cause these things to self-assembly. And you can just Google self-assembly nanotechnology. This is not a conspiracy. You'll get tons of documents and real research articles about how these things are good for drug delivery systems and everything else. And so what'll happen under certain frequencies, and they've done this with, putting a cell phone right next to a slide or putting a Wi-Fi router, and you see all these things come together and actually form larger antenna-like structures. And then they move that away and it breaks apart and they bring that back. So we already know with the rollout of 5G and 6G, and you remember during COVID, the sickest areas were the ones that had the highest amounts of cellular towers and 5G, mostly large cities, right, that had all these things on top of every building and stuff. And they also affect the way the red blood cells are. See, these are not really touching. There's some deformed cells and everything, but they call this as rouleau formation, or it looks like stacks of coins. And this is in like you and I. Everyone is having problems with rouleau formation because of all these foreign substances in the body, and of course those hydrogels can also clump together and cause these big white rubbery blood clots that embalmers have been finding. So all of this crazy stuff, this nanotech in the blood is also creating a big response of the immune system. So the immune system is responding to these things with inflammation and autoimmune type of things. We used to have like 20 different autoimmune classifications, and now there's like over 120 quote autoimmune diseases. And a lot of this stems from all of these toxins and nanotech and everything entering the body, and we're just in this chronic inflamed state. And chronic inflammation then causes oxidative stress, and then oxidative stress then damages the mitochondria and the mitochondrial DNA and maybe even the nuclear DNA. And then when cells go to replicate, there's genetic mismatches there in replication, and then that of course leads to the body's immune system having to get rid of all those bad cells, and those bad cells can eventually become cancers and things like that. So it all kind of boils down to this: the root cause of disease that we've always talked about and you talk about is too many external and internal toxins for our body to be able to handle. And
Right.
all of that spillover, that bioaccumulation, we don't everyone's body's a little different. We all eat different, we all do different types of things, we all have different lifestyles. So we don't know how many. Let's say our body can clear 1 million toxins a day, but we're taking in 2 or 3 or 4 million. There's a bioaccumulation of millions of toxins every day, and
Right.
eventually that bioaccumulation, starts causing all these oxidative stress and damage. And it all starts really in the intestinal tract, because that's where we take most of it in, through breathing, through beverages, through food. Yeah, we get other things like through our skin and all that, but most of it comes in through the intestinal tract. And that's also our main elimination route. So that's where we got to start with that first, and then goes straight to the liver after that, because where's the liver dump? it dumps into the intestinal tract. If that's blocked up and you have poor elimination, then all that's going to do is dump toxins in the intestinal tract, cause inflammation from all those toxins being reintroduced into the intestinal tract. Then the inflammation spreads out the intestinal tract and causes leaky gut. Then all those toxins just go right back into the system and cause immune reactions and inflammation and more problems.
Let alone not the ability to absorb the nutrients that you think you are getting on purpose. And this is why you can not change anything. You're exercising, you're sleeping, you're eating all the organic food, doing everything that you've been doing for 10 years. And all of a sudden you're reacting, you're feeling worse. The energy's down, the mitochondria is suffering, all of this. And there's people out there that, and doctors say, oh, you don't need to do cleanses. Your liver knows how to handle toxins. Well, it knew how to handle the toxins of 100 years ago because the load was low. The bathtub was not overflowing. And now our systems are being demanded to work so hard, way more than it is capable of doing on its own. And that's where the detoxification comes in. The pooping. I talk about pooping all the time because it is the most fundamental way to detox. And I know people that are going to the bathroom once every 3 days, once every 7 days. And I tell them, think about a baby. They eat, they poop, they sleep. They eat, they poop, they sleep, because that is the basic foundation of survival. So where is the constipation and the elimination come into this? You touched on it a little bit, and I want to get into the oxy powder, one of my very favorite supplements. It's part of my liver cleanse, which then we'll get into the liver, but you have to be eliminating before you do anything else.
Right. And that kind of goes into really what we found is like, the best kind of order of detoxification is based on elimination pathways, really. And so why you see people out there and they buy these all-in-one detox kits that they'll supposedly work on heavy metals and parasites and yeast, mold, fungus, and everything all in one. And they think they're going to take this for a week and get better, but they end up getting way worse. Because you take all that, if you start pulling heavy metals and start killing parasites and bacteria and fungus and viruses, and you have blocked elimination routes, that's a recipe for disaster. And that's why people get so many detox reactions, or what we call Herxheimer reactions, is because they're dumping all that right back into the system and it can't get out. So that's why we believe that, and not only us, but Hippocrates and Tesla and everybody believe that health begins in the gut. So our first product we ever developed was the oxy powder, because we had to get that cleaned up first for better absorption, for decreasing gut inflammation, for cleaning up leaky gut, and for getting all of the 5 to 10 pounds of compacted fecal material that people are walking around with on a daily basis. Putrefied proteins, rancid fats, fermented carbohydrates that are all up in there. The intestinal tract, when you cut it open and spread it out, is the size of a tennis court with all these tiny microvilli, and it's just got this layer of small gunk. And medical doctors will always say, "Oh, that's a myth about we do colonoscopies all the time and we don't see 5 to 10 pounds of compacted." First of all, you're doing the colon. That's only the last 6 feet. That's not the entire small intestine where all your absorption occurs. Yes, the colon is important because it's part of the elimination and it's also, microbiome and everything. But the colon just works on concentrating the poop and water and electrolytes. That's not your main. Small intestine is the main issue. And with oxypowder, you're able to clean the small and large intestine. And people go do colonics and stuff like that, and that's okay. But that's, again, only the last 6 feet. What are you going to do for the small intestine? Mm. So oxy powder is basically a super ozonated magnesium. So if you look at the label, you might think it's a magnesium product, but it's not. Magnesium is just a carrier for holding and bonding large amounts of oxygen and ozone in a stable form, so that when you take that, it actually breaks apart in the stomach. You take it at night before bed, and it breaks apart in the stomach and releases oxygen and ozone for over 18 hours. And that oxygen and ozone helps to oxidize the compacted fecal material and break it down on an atomic level so you can flush that out. Yes, magnesium does help pull water into the intestinal tract, so that does add some benefit. But you can take something like magnesium glycinate or any other type of magnesium, and then the next night take oxy powder, and it's a totally different thing. Any type of magnesium will help you go a little bit better because of that drawing water in, but it's about 20 times the difference, as you know, when you're taking oxy powder, which is not a magnesium product. In fact, the type of magnesium that we use in oxy powder is poorly absorbed on purpose because, if you have somebody who's extremely backed up, they may have to take a little bit more, and we don't want like high amounts of magnesium being absorbed. It's not about the magnesium, it's about the ozone and oxygen. And so people always ask, well, how does ozone break down stuff? And if you think about like take a bite out of an apple, put it on the counter, it starts interacting with oxygen and ozone in the air and turns brown. That's oxidation. And then it starts kind of shrinking over time because oxygen and ozone is really charged and it pulls away electrons. We're talking on an atomic level here. It's pulling away electrons from the apple, so it's actually slowly breaking it down, and that's without any type of cramping or things like you get with herbal laxatives like Coscar, Sagrada, and Senna, and all that. Those don't break anything down. All they do is cramp the intestinal tract, and that helps move things along. But it's extremely painful, and also creates a dependence. When that hits you, it's like, oh, holy cow, it's pain. And then when you take it away, you are artificially stimulating the intestinal tract, and now you're not. So you can get a rebound constipation. Mm-hmm. It's also not something you can take if you're pregnant because of the cramping and all that.
And so that does not occur with the oxy powder. Is that right? That there's not a dependency to the product?
No dependency at all. We've had it out for 26 years now, and you can take it every single day, or you can just take it on the weekends. Sometimes because it does make you go more. Sometimes people want to just take it on the weekends when they're not at work and be inconvenienced. But when you take it at night, in the morning, it's more of a gentle urge. You're not going to be like, I better get to the bathroom immediately, and I'm in extreme pain and sweating and everything else like you get with laxatives. Doesn't do that. Yes, you have more of an urge, but basically, most people should be going at least 2 times a day. We have people that say, yeah, I'm pretty regular. I go once a week. And we're like, what? Once a week? You're incredibly toxic. Exactly. You should be going twice a day. Now, when you're taking oxy powder, you're probably going to go about 4 times a day. So it's going to pretty much double that.
Right. And so where would you have people start with just 1 cap a day and increase, or is there a normal dose that you recommend?
Well, the recommended dose on the bottle is 4 capsules, and you start by doing that for 6 days straight. That's going to do a deep intestinal cleanse. You're going to be tired of doing it after 6 days because of having to go to the bathroom quite a bit more. But that's what we recommend, doing that deep cleanse at least like every 2 or 3 months, and then in between that, taking it 2 or 3 times a week, usually on weekends, or if you had a heavy meal, or you're thinking you're just feeling kind of blocked up, or you're traveling, and traveling can cause some constipation. So we recommend most people on a sort of a maintenance are taking somewhere between 2, maybe 3. Some people, if you're really regular, like you're healthy like you are, you might only take you 1 or 2. Because you become a little bit more sensitive to it. You're not so backed up. And then it depends a little bit on how regular that person is when they start. If they're a person that's only going once a week, they're probably going to need the full 4. Yeah. For sure. And we've had some people even go all the way up into 10 or 15 capsules. But once they start getting everything moving, then it's only a few days before they're able to go all the way back down to like 2 or 3 or 4, just to get that initial movement. But also it's safe for pregnant women. And pregnant women get constipated. Right now, we're seeing a huge jump in oxy powder with GLP-1 patients because it causes constipation. Pain medications cause constipation. Little kids, Even infants that are, maybe can't breastfeed and they have to go to formula and they get constipated, people take a capsule and open it up and sprinkle it, and it gets them going and it's totally safe. Pets that get constipated, sprinkle some oxy powder on their food.
That's amazing because I have mothers and pet owners ask me all the time, what do I do? And I didn't know that you were safely able to take oxy powder as a gentle help with constipation. So that's fantastic news. Let's jump into the liver. I am all about the liver. You got to love on your liver. People are doing HRT and peptides and the GLPs and all this stuff, and it's not working. They're not getting results because the liver has to process everything. The liver is where your thyroid hormones are converting. So if your thyroid is sluggish, you got to look at your liver. And if your liver is sluggish, it could be causing your thyroid issues. So where does liver fit into the detoxification pathways and
Yeah, so, yeah.
protocol?
So after the intestinal tract is clear, then you start moving on to the liver because, again, when you start dumping things from the liver and maybe even working on liver flukes and fat, non-alcoholic fatty liver and everything else, all of those toxins from the liver dump into the drainage system through the hepatic vessels and the hepatic ducts into the intestinal tract. So if that intestinal tract is not clear first before you start liver, then you're dumping it into a backed up intestinal tract. And again, like you said, that can inflame the gut, cause more leaky gut, cause those things to go back into the system. So it would be intestinal tract first and then liver. And sometimes you have to do 2 or 3 liver if you've got significant issues. My brother, Dr. Group, he says that all of our livers are functioning at about 20%.
Mm.
He recommends multiple liver cleanses before moving on to harmful organisms would be next. Parasites, yeast, mold, fungus, bacteria, virus, all that type of stuff. And then finally, after that, doing another liver cleanse after harmful organisms would really be recommended. And then finally, heavy metal chemical cleansing.
Yeah, and can you explain with like parasites and pathogens how they actually release heavy metals and other toxins as the die off happens?
Yeah, they actually feed and get energy from heavy metals in their processes. And so they also harbor other parasites inside them, other bacteria and viruses, and endotoxins. They basically have venoms. And so when you kill parasites, they release all of that stuff, including all those venoms that are very, very inflammatory. And so, yeah, those metals get released back into the system. And then, of course, your liver has to be clean to process those. And there's a tie-in where between liver and kidney. If your liver is clean, your kidneys generally are going to be clean. They kind of go hand in hand because the liver's doing most of the work first, and then the kidneys, doing their filtration. But kidney cleansing is also necessary for processing because some of the heavy metals will come out through the urinary tract. But what we've seen is that the tie-in between liver and kidney, if the liver is being cleansed significantly, the kidneys follow with
That
that.
makes sense. It makes sense. People will ask me, how do I get rid of the puffiness under my eyes? Do I put cucumbers on them or ice packs? I'm like, no, you need to clean out your liver and your kidneys. This is kidneys and liver, right?
Yes, and like you mentioned, sleep, because sleep is critical in the detoxification pathways. That's when the glymphatic system, we know the lymphatic system that helps move toxins through into the liver and into the bloodstream, but then we have the glymphatic system in the brain that activates at night while we sleep, and that's what moves the toxins out of the brain.
Yeah. So now I want to talk about something that I think is massively underrated right now, and that's histamine. And people are saying, why am I getting these big welts when I inject my peptides? Or I've never had allergies in my life and now I'm anxious, I'm sneezing, I'm having rashes. The symptoms could show up in a different way for a different person. Bloating, constipation, and the histamine load is so high today. I've never had issues with allergies in my life. And now I am so stringent about my diet and about the supplements that I'm taking to manage my histamine. So, why are people all of a sudden having issues with histamine?
Yeah, and histamine. It's not a bad thing. Histamine responses are supposed to protect us, but they're really overtaxed, like dramatically, 100 times. And now you have all these people being diagnosed with MCAS,
Yeah.
mast cell activation syndrome, because there's so many toxins that we're reacting to that the histamine, the mast cells go on overdrive and overproduce all of this histamine. The histamine is supposed to be produced to increase blood flow to the area and bring immune cells to the area and clean out whatever it is, but it's being hyper stimulated by environmental toxins, environmental allergies, aluminum, breathing in aluminum. So all these things are causing this high histamine. So we have to look at what are ways to slow down the mast cells and to deal with as natural antihistamines, right? So we know lots of fruits and vegetables are really good as antihistamines, like onions and apples, and so those are good things that to look at. But quercetin is like the number one
Mhm.
natural antihistamine.
Yeah. Let's talk about your quercetin because there's a lot of junk out there. I talk about the fact that don't get your supplements off of Amazon, first of all, because you don't know what you're getting. But even on the real brand supplements out there, there's fillers, there's toxins. They might not even have the ingredients that they say they have in them. And then so you could get a ton of different brands of supplement of quercetin, and yours is very different. So let's get into that.
Right, and there are a lot of good quercetin out there, but the absorption intracellular really requires more of the lipid type of transfer. So our quercetin, or the raw material that we get to make our quercetin, is called phytosomal quercetin. Also goes by the trade name Quercifit. So that's from Indena Labs in Italy, and they have done over 35 different studies on absorption and on all different types of uses for antihistamine, anti-allergy, anti-asthma. Before COVID, the number one thing for allergies was quercetin. And then when COVID hit, everybody started looking at quercetin because it was a zinc ionophore, which meant that it opened up the cells so that zinc could come in, and zinc would be the what actually stopped the replication. So that was basically the hydroxychloroquine natural alternative, because that's what hydroxychloroquine does, is open up the cells so zinc can get in there. So they actually started putting out things, anti-quercetin type of stuff during that, of course. So but yes, so the phytosomal is basically wrapping the quercetin in lipids, organic sunflower lecithin, basically, so that it becomes more permeable to get into the cells where we really need to stop the histamine and the mast cells and everything else. So it gets, their own research shows 20 times higher absorption. So instead of having to take 5 or 10 or whatever quercetin pills just so that you can get an effective dose, you can do it in one or two. And we see dramatic improvement with people taking 2 capsules twice a day. Now, if you're just doing everyday use, it's not only histamine that it lowers, but quercetin is anti-cancer. It lowers huge amounts of other types of inflammation, like interleukins and cytokines. The cytokine storm, that during that quercetin is extremely beneficial for that as well. So not just histamine, but all kinds of different types of inflammation as well.
I love it. Okay, we have to wrap up. I knew we were going to run out of time. For the person who's never detoxed and is swimming in all of this exposure, it can be very overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming for me. And I am a type A personality. I do things like by the book and I love this stuff, but it gets overwhelming. What is the single most important first step?
Well, I would say the first step is cleansing the intestinal tract first. But lifestyle would be sweating. We've got a lot of practitioners and doctors and scientists within our kind of our sphere, and your sphere too, that are looking at a sweat infrared sauna, or just sweating and exercise, and testing the sweat and finding high amounts of heavy metals and microplastics and aluminum. So that is a big pathway for detox to get that out, because again, intestinal tract, we want to keep that clean to keep things from getting in, but we have a lot of things that already got in.
Right.
and how we're going to get them once they're already in. There's things like we mentioned C60 and activated charcoal and other things that can kind of get in to help trap things, and EDTA and chelators and things like that once it's already gotten in. But one of the best ways once it's gotten in is sweating, and you
Yeah.
have to do that at least 3 times a week.
Yeah. I mentioned to you the other day when we were talking that my sweat stinks. It smells and it changes also after different environments, after traveling and then coming back. And it's because all those toxins are just coming out, and the skin is the easiest way for those toxins to just come out. So,
And clean water. You've got to have that clean water to flush it out too.
yep. And lymphatic drainage and rebounding and movement. Sitting on a couch is not going to get those toxins out. Thank you so much, Dr. Group. I am so grateful for the connection, and I know we're going to be doing this again. And we will be having many of the supplements we've talked about on our website, Accelerated Health Products. So thanks again for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just love his knowledge, and it really brings light to why you're not feeling your best, why you're bloated, why you're having skin issues, exhausted, reacting to everything, you're moody, you can't lose weight no matter what you do, and you haven't changed anything. What used to work for you isn't working for you now, and the problem is not your willpower. At the root, there is toxicity, an overburdened liver, a congested colon, and a histamine system that is completely overwhelmed. So where do we start? I love, love, love the oxy powder. This opens the colon so the toxins can actually leave the body, gets the elimination going. And so many of you are constipated and you're afraid to talk about it. You are going to see results by the morning. This is the foundation. Then I always point to acceleradine iodine, the most critical mineral for detoxification that most people are not talking about is iodine. Every single cell in the body requires it to function, including every detox pathway. And of course, it's boosting your metabolism and your thyroid. Your thyroid is your master endocrine gland, and it helps energize the liver to do the liver's job. So you need to start with acceleradine iodine and then add in accelerated liver care. Liver is where you are processing everything. Accelerated liver care hits the phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox pathways. You're going to increase your bile production, the detergent to get all the toxins out, the chemtrails, the microplastics, the chemical exposures. And then you've got your binder, accelerated cellular detox powder. It has the activated charcoal he was talking about, but it has other ingredients, apple fiber to bulk up and help the movement go through. It also reduces inflammation in the gut and the colon and helps with that balancing the digestive system, binding the toxins and getting everything out. And quercetin, one of my very favorite supplements, and this is now on our website, his global healing quercetin. Quercetin is a natural mast cell stabilizer. It's supporting your histamine response. Why are you bloated all of a sudden? Why are you flushing? You're losing your hair. You just don't feel right. You're anxious. You just are not yourself. You're reacting to foods that you used to not react to. Stacking this with liver care and the detox powder is the most complete histamine and detox support. So you've got to do things in the right order. You want to cleanse your colon first, then your liver, and then go after the pathogens, maybe another liver cleanse, and then go after the heavy metals, and you are going to feel back to yourself again. I do this all year round. Why? Because detoxification is essential now. It's mandatory. It is not an option. In 2026, we are living in a world that our parents and our grandparents did not experience. So it's time to take your detoxification to another level. Thanks for tuning in today. And before you leave, I want to know what hit home with you. What symptoms are you all of a sudden experiencing? And it's your things are not working anymore. Your clean diet, your exercise, the weight's creeping on and you don't know why. You think it's hormonal, but the HRT isn't working. Leave a comment below. And if you haven't joined my free group coaching on Telegram, do so today. I answer your questions every single day of the week. I post new things to keep your mind going, giving your control back to you over your health. For all of my articles, the free group coaching, the supplements we mentioned, you can go to acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Use coupon podcast10 on your first order. And most of you haven't subscribed, so click that button below and you will be notified every time a new podcast is dropped. They're found on every podcast outlet, including Spotify, Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, and more. And I drop new episodes 3 to 4 days a week. So join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.
Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.